And welcome to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Louis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Louis Bright Raven, comics professional, writer, illustrator, editor for nearing my 28th year in the industry. Um, this week we're going to be talking about the most recent edition of the previews catalog and some of the stuff that I found in there that you might want to look into yourselves. We're going to do some reviews of books that I got this week. And we're going to answer some questions from readers. Unfortunately, we have to do a few things first. First, we have to talk about our normal trying to think of the word, our normal statement of the show for our notice. This edition of Quoth the Raven is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content we will feature is kid-friendly, the context of the episode is to address and educate older teens and adults to inform them of said content for them to research as consumers in service of their youth, i.e. parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. There is always the possibility of adult language present on the episode as well. Rated TV 16 and up. But the real unfortunate news that I have to share with you tonight is we lost one of our artists of our industry yesterday, a gentleman by the name of Adrian Nelson. He died yesterday. I don't know exactly what the cause of death was. All I know is he just had his birthday on the 3rd of February, and he was hospitalized last week. And it was informed by Antarctic Press and confirmed by other multiple sources that he had passed away. So I think he had just gotten one of his first major projects approved of at Antarctic that was supposed to come out later this year, and unfortunately this happened. So my condolences to his family, his friends, and his cohorts at Antarctic Press and everywhere else. Obviously, the gentleman was much too young to be going, and it's a shame. So our hearts go out to them. Mm-hmm. And good evening to one of our regular viewers, John Norris. Mm-hmm. Good to see you as always, John. Mm-hmm. We're going to go ahead and get into our questions. Our first question is going to be a little bit snarky. It's from Mark. And his question is, have you heard about the new Expendables comic by Chuck Dixon and Graham Nolan that's being crowdfunded and published by your boy Zach, a.k.a. Richard Meyer? Jealous much? He went on with his actual email and did a whole spiel at me because he seems to think that I have this sort of hatred or vitriol towards Richard. I really don't. I'm kind of how do I explain this? There's certainly a place for Richard in the business. It's just sometimes I think the way he conducts himself on his podcasts and the way he ridicules other creators is such that it undermines his own credibility. And that's what I criticize about him, not what he does as a creator or as a publisher himself. Okay, so there's that. Now, as far as the comic itself, number one, I'm not a fan of the Expendables franchise from the movies. I've never seen them. I don't care. So I certainly wouldn't be jealous of it. Um, I'm just, I've heard of it. I see what's going on. Um, to me, it's just another comic. And if they do well, fine. If they don't, whatever. I'm sure it'll be funded. It's, you know, it's got a decent enough fan base from the movies. It should be funded. Chuck and Graham are certainly commendable talent. So, whatever is how I kind of look at it. But at the same time, I also look at it as it's just another licensed book, so to speak. It's no different than a Star Wars comic or Transformers or G.I. Joe or Aliens or Predator or any of the other comics. And a lot of the comic skaters, including Richard, have at times criticized the industry for going Hollywood, as it were. So for him to publish that, he's kind of being a little hypocritical in a way, I think. But again, whatever, all the power to him. So that's pretty much what I think of that. Our next question is from Allie. And her question is, if money were no limitation and you could legally purchase every comic made, would you? Why or why not? That's actually a pretty good question. No, I wouldn't, because there's certainly comics that just don't appeal to me. But the notion of having the ability to just get everything that you want, and legally, because so many people get comics illegally these days through illegal downloading or just going other ways to get things. I guess. But to me, it's more about there's so much that you don't even get to see in the market that's not available in the mainstream because of how our structure is set up, that's not even available to be considered to be purchased. That annoys me. Not so much that I don't have the money for it. The fact that I don't have the money for it is also a factor, certainly, but it's more that I don't even have the option of seeing if I want to buy it. That is more annoying to me. But yeah, I think though, if money were no object, I think if money were no object, I'd probably take the money to try and make a system so that the comics were available to everyone else, and they can make that option available to people rather than worry about getting it for myself. But that's just me. Our next question. Anonymous asks, do you read LGBTQ comics? Meaning books that have lesbians or bisexual, transsexual, bi queers, whatever. Yeah, at times. I've read plenty of comics that feature characters of that nature. I don't actively seek them out per se, I guess. But I don't avoid them either. If it happens to be something happens to be part of what the story is or what the character is, that's fine. It has to be organic to the story, I guess you could say. I've even edited books that had to do with gay characters, because when I was in college and I ran Comic Artists Press Alliance at Central Michigan University, my vice president, Roger Moore, is a gay black man, and he did a gay black character. So there you go. So no, not a problem with that, personally. I don't think that sexuality should be something that's driven down the audience's throat as the primary drive of a story. But otherwise, like I said, as long as it's something that's organic and natural to the flow of what's being told as a story, and not something that's just done to tantalize or shock value for an audience, then I don't see a problem with it. Next question is another one from another anonymous person. And the question is, what do you think about DC making the Strange Adventures comic by Tom King and Mitch Gerads and Evan Shaner a Black Label mature reader's book? Well, to be honest with you, I really don't know. I don't know what the story was supposed to be. If the story is intended to be a mature reader's book, then there's no reason why it shouldn't be a Black Label. Maybe they decided to make a Black Label because they thought, since most of the Black Label books have been oversized, they decided to make it put it oversized because they wanted to make it look better. Thought the larger print would be better for the artwork. I don't know the real reasons why they decided to go to Black Label. From what I understand, from what I've read about the story of it, it's because of Tom and Mitch previous works, like Sheriff of Babylon being a more mature theme, trying to target that audience. But again, every story is its own thing, so I don't really know. I have no problem with it being mature readers if that's what they want it to be, and if that's what they want to target it as. I'm going to read it either way. I had planned on reading it either way, so whichever. Our next question is from Mike, and he asks, do you think sites like CBR, Bleeding Cool, and Newsarama make really bad articles on purpose because there's quote-unquote slow news days sometimes? I don't know if it's so much that they do that on purpose as so much as it is sometimes the nature of how comics news media is structured today. A lot of what we get as news articles are based on press releases from the company's management groups themselves. And there's a lot of give and take about what can and can't be said and when. And I think that leads to a lot of non-stories being presented a lot of times. And then because they're non-stories, there's something added to try and put a twist on it, or something added to try and make it more clickbaity, I guess you would say the word is, or phrase, to try and get people to read. And so I think that's part of it. And I think they're showering the internet, looking for, scrounging, looking through everything to find every little thing that they can talk about. And sometimes I just think some of the stories, there's nothing there, but other times, it is what it is, but they do it on purpose, as in with intent of malice to do harm to the industry. I don't know. I'd like to think they don't do it with malice and intent of malice. I think it's more just a lack of the journalistic background in a lot, and really a change of how journalism is done in general in media over the last 15, 20 years with the advent of the internet. That has changed our culture and how we do present news in a slapdash method that isn't really always accurate or properly functional, in my opinion. So I think that's more an accurate description of the situation rather than something of a intentional problem that any of them create. And me being an old school journalist, having that background from, prior to the internet and having worked in comics journalism before that era. Yeah, there is a time where I get annoyed with it, but that's one of the reasons why I don't do a daily podcast. Is I try to take the time to do things right, and sometimes it's why, like last week, I did the previews, but I didn't give you a full thing. That's why we're doing previews again this week, because I didn't have the time to do a full presentation. So that's the difference, I guess you could say. Our next question, if we have one, is another one from another anonymous source. And his question is their question, I should say. What do you think about IDW Comics' losses of 800,000 or 800K in the last quarter and $5.2 million for the year? Well, I think that stands pretty much even with what looks, if you look at their sales numbers and order numbers from Comic-Con and what comics cost for printing, and how much, what costs to be production, and how much you're paying your talent and shipping and everything, it sounds about right to me. I mean, I don't think people realize, that a $3.99 comic book, $3.99 doesn't go to the publisher. It's like, I don't know, maybe $1.10 the most, maybe more, closer to 85 to $1.10 of that $3.99 book goes back to the publisher, and they have to split that all up, and it doesn't really add up when you're only selling 3,000 or 4,000 units of a book, which a lot of their books only sell that low. A lot of books that are getting printed, not just from IDW, but across the entire lower third of the top 300, are not making profits. Unfortunately, they're either breaking even or they're losing money, and that's a problem in our industry. And I don't think it's a red flag, or that we need to be pointing out IDW and saying, "Oh my God, IDW is in trouble," because it's indicative of a larger problem in the industry. And it just so happens that, yes, IDW has other issues as IDW Holdings. Their entire company is taking losses. But that's also because they got to spend a lot of money on their licenses back to their licensors, and give money back to their licensors for the properties that they have bought the publishing rights to. So that makes a difference, that other companies might not have. So, I don't look at it as them being failures so much as I think is indicative of looking at the industry. If we need to figure out how to correct that for everybody, not just IDW, but everybody, and look at them as, okay, why is this happening to them? And if we can correct that with them so that they're getting closer to the black or getting more profit, we can fix that with everybody who's got licensed books, whether that's Dynamite, Dark Horse, well, your boy Zach with Expendables, whoever it is, because it really does run across the boards that way. So that's what I would say about that. Okay, if you have other questions, you can email them to Quoth the Raven, LBR72@gmail.com. Subject is QTR questions. Please indicate whether or not you want your name and locale read on air. As always, we always appreciate your questions each and every week. we're going to go to our next section, which is talking about the previews book again. We talked about previews last week a little bit. Like I said, I last week I told you I went through the book and I pointed out some things here and there, and I showed a few items, and I'll revisit a little bit what I showed last week plus some. But my actual filling catalog that I turned into my store this week, I picked out 47 singles and trade paperbacks collectively total for the month. And that's what I could afford this month, for pre-order. And that's about a fair to middling range for me. It's sometimes I get a little bit higher, sometimes I'm a little bit lower, but usually I'm in the 45 to 50 item range. Sometimes I'll go as high as 80 items. And there wasn't that many items this month that I could have picked, but I had to be a little more conservative due to budget constraints this month. So we're going to talk about some of the things I'm planning on getting and some of the things that I'm not getting, but I would recommend if I were like owning a comic shop, or if I was talking, like when I go to the library, I'll talk to the head of the library who handles the graphic novels division and let them know that these books are coming and that they should look into them for their collections. Okay. And we're going to start with Adventure Man number 1, $3.99. And the catalog was on page 38. Publisher's Image Comics. The writer is Matt Fraction. The artists are Terry and Rachel Dotson. The genre is action adventure. The release date will be April 29th, 2020. And what it's about is a pulp hero book series called Adventure Man ended in a heartbreaking cliffhanger with our hero facing execution at the vile hand of his ultra nemesis Baron Bazaar on the eve of the, it's supposed to say, macabre apocalypse. Or did it? 80 years after the series' apparent demise, single mother Claire and her adventure fan son Tommy seem to be the only two people alive who remember the thrilling saga. But from that memory sparks a resurrection. Where his story ended, her story begins. Now, first off, I happen to be a fan of Terry and Rachel Dotson. I just don't get a lot of their freelance stuff from Marvel because I just don't like a lot of Marvel content these days. But I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit of the preview art again, because they did give a little bit of the preview art in the book. And that's Claire in a bookstore reading a book and then getting this strange woman in old attire approaching her and giving her a special book. It happens to be the Adventure Man book. Now, there we go. Yes, do it that way. It's not easy to do it with the camera. Sorry about the glare there from the light. But the woman realizes that there's someone coming, and she goes out the back, and they come in, and they chase after her, and then she chases after them. Now, that's pretty much what they gave us for the preview on that so far. But I like the idea of just reliving that type of stuff. And I don't know if it's going to be Indiana Jones type adventure, pulp adventure, or if it's going to be, more Tom Strong or that sort of thing. But it should be a fun book. And I'm looking forward to seeing that one. Let's see here. What else we got here? We have Against Hope. And I'm going to see if I can fix something here real quick. There we go. Against Hope is from Dark Horse. It's on page 99 of the catalog. And I'm going to jump around the catalog a little bit because the books are done in order alphabetically, not from where they are in the book necessarily. But it's a trade paperback, and it is $19.99. The Adventure Man will be $3.99. And by the way, that Adventure Man comic will be 64 pages, the equivalent of 3 issues for that $3.99 for that first issue. So that's an extra special deal. Anyway, Against Hope, Dark Horse Publishing, page 99. It's a crime drama, creator Victor Santos. It's releasing on June 17th. And what it's about is a young woman named Hope who had her boyfriend murdered, and she almost got killed by a group of neo-Nazis. And now she is tracking them down and exacting revenge. When she realizes that the family that tried to kill her is now running for public office, and they run a white nationalist group from the shadows. That just looks really interesting to me. And in today's political attitudes and some of the stuff that we've seen, and what we're facing and some of the negative stuff that people are assuming towards different political parties being white supremacists or not being white supremacists. I think that people who are looking for something for, I guess you could say, a safe outlet to release some of that frustration and anger, there's a book to read that you can relate to and maybe vent some of that frustration and through the book by reading it. So that's one of the reasons why I went ahead and recommended that book. And I ordered that. So hopefully when that comes out, I'll be able to do a review on that when it comes out later this summer. Our next book is called The Dark Matter of Mona Starr. And it comes from Amulet Books on page 253. And comes in 2 editions, a soft cover edition for $14.99 and a hardcover edition for $22.99. And the creator is Laura Lee Gullidge, and the genre is, I call it young adult fantasy, but it's maybe a little bit more than that, I guess. A little bit of a, I don't want to call it biography, but well, let's see what you guys think. Well, it's about, sometimes the world's a little bit too much for Mona Starr. She's sweet, geeky, and creative, but it's hard for her to make friends or even connect with other people. She's like a lot of sensitive teenagers, but her struggle with depression is a bit different. Mona calls it her matter. The matter gets everywhere, telling Mona she's not good enough and that everyone around her wishes she would go away. But through therapy, art, writing, and the persistence of a few good friends, Mona starts to understand her matter and show she and readers can turn their fare into strengths. And it is an all ages book. Now, like I said, a little bit fantasy because I don't, I said fantasy mostly because what you're doing is using your imagination to fight off depression. And whatever she's facing is both imagined and real when you're dealing with depression. But dealing with depression is a very serious matter as well. So I guess you could say it's both real life and YA fantasy. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what that book's doing. And I can't remember if I actually ordered this for sure, but if I didn't order, I'm definitely making mention of it for both my comic shop and the local library to get a copy of this series for this reason, because I think it's a good idea. And when I get a chance to talk to some of the local educators and therapists for the child psychologists for the schools, I'll also make a mention of the book as well. And that's something that we should do. If you have someone in your life that works in the educational field, works as a child psychologist, this is the kind of stuff, if you're into comics, that's the kind of stuff that you need to let them know that stuff exists and let them explore it to see if it fits and can be a benefit to their job or benefit to their charges. Took the computer long enough to switch over to looking at previews, didn't it? Sorry about that. Let's see what else we got. We have Dead Day #1 from Aftershock Comics. Writer, this is on page 236 of the catalog. It's $3.99. Part of the reason I'm getting this one, recommended this one, is I got an earlier book by Ryan Perro, the writer from Aftershock, called Oberon, which I haven't had a chance to review for the podcast, but I will do shortly, probably next couple weeks. But I like that series, so I thought I'd probably give this one a shot. But Ryan's the writer. Artist is Evgeny Bornyakov. Hope I didn't slaughter your name too badly. Colors are Juancho Velez. The genre is horror/dark comedy. Release date is April 15th, 2020. What it's about is if the dead could come back for just one night, would we want them to? Meet the Haskins, a seemingly normal suburban family, as they prepare for the annual macabre holiday known as Dead Day, when the deceased rise from the grave from sunset to sunrise. Some come back to reunite with family and friends, others for one last night of debauchery, and others with only one thing on their decomposing mind: revenge. And of course, this is for mature readers. Now, obviously, some people are sick of the zombie craze with The Walking Dead and stuff, but I'm hoping that this will be a cute, humorous thing and not the typical zombie stuff that we've seen regularly in comics for the last number of years with that genre. It just seems to me that you can do something different with the genre and still have it be fresh. But we'll see when it comes out. And I'm taking a leap of faith a little bit based on what I read with Oberon, with Perro as the writer. So that's where I picked that one from. Our next pick from the previous catalog is Kent State, 4 Dead in Ohio, from page 228. It's from Abrams Comics Arts. It is $24.99. It is by creator Durf Backdurf. For those of you who don't know who Durf is, he is well known for the series My Friend Dahmer. This is another historical genre book. His release date is on April 7th, 2020. I think it's a very important book that we should consider, and it's a good idea for schools and libraries, especially. So on May 4th, 1970, in case you didn't know, we had an incident in Ohio where we had some college kids killed. They were gunned down at Kent State University. Um, so, as you can see, reading the screen, the Ohio National Guard gunned down unarmed college students protesting the Vietnam War at Kent State. There were 67 shots fired, 4 killed students, and 9 were shot and wounded. Durf, the creator, was 10 years old at the time and saw those same guardmen patrolling his nearby hometown, sent in by the governor of Ohio to crush a truckers' strike at the same time that was going on, because we were in a very different times in the early 70s. We had a lot of consternation in America, I guess you could say. And the author examines these events in the 4 days in Ohio and the 4 lives that were lost. This is the kind of comic that I think, I look around in America today and I look at what's going on with the Trump situation and stuff like that. And I think a book like this and several other books that I'm going to bring up in this segment of the show, because there's a lot more biographical, historical books I'm going to bring up. I think these are books that people need to start getting to get a better historical perspective, because I think that we're forgetting our history in this country. We're forgetting our the tragedies of America, and we're repeating those tragedies because we've forgotten them. We repeated what we just went through the other day with Trump being acquitted because of all the crap that we went through with Clinton being acquitted for all the times he was being charged and then not being charged and not getting anything for what he was being after for impeachment. And yes, he was impeached for something that he shouldn't have been impeached for, but there was a lot of shit he should have been impeached for that he wasn't. And it's just, it's all basically a big finger to each party, one to the other 25 years after the fact, and it's stupid. But it's because we don't know our history, or we've chosen to forget our history. So I'm bringing books like these up to your attention so that people should remember that this is important. And it's important that when we have creators that are doing projects like this, and bringing forth history in our art form, we need to embrace them and show that this is comics too, not just men in tights punching faces and fighting for the American way or whatever. So that's why I'm kind of on that. I'm on that hill at the moment, I guess you could say. Our next book. Whoops. There we go. Is called Cody. And it's $14.99. It's on page 141 from Top Shelf IDW Publishing. The creator is Jared Cullum, not Callum. ISBN number, because they happen to mention it, was 978-1-60309-467-2. Genre is adventure. Release date is in June of 2020. What it's about is it's a story of 2 friends separated by everything in the world except love. Katya and her Mima are spending another normal summer in their cottage in Alaska when a chance accident leaves Katya face to face with the biggest creature she's ever seen, an enormous Kodiak bear, soon to become her closest friend. But when Katya has to return home to Seattle, the two are torn apart, leaving Cody to do whatever it takes to reunite with his fragile little friend. This is an all ages kids type comic, and I can't wait to see what this bear is going to do to get from Alaska to Seattle and what's going to happen. Just the idea of it just blows my mind. Because I lived in Alaska when I was a small child myself. My father was Army. We were based in Fairbanks, and I've seen bear, and I not up close like that in the picture, but I've seen them, big bears, and I've seen other wild animals that were large, and we had giant moose that came up to our homes on base and stuff like that. That could have just walked right through your front door, or not door, but your huge windows that we had. Just walked right through your home. So I'm used to this type of thing, and I just I want to see what this is. So I'm definitely getting this book. The artwork, I'm going to go ahead and cut back to this again. It's got a nice animated type feel to it. The name Katya, I'm getting I don't know if it's it kind of feels like a Russian thing, but I mean, it doesn't bother me that's that way. But I guess there's a Russian contingent population in Seattle. I've never been to Seattle, so I don't know. But I'm just looking forward to seeing what this is and reviewing it. I really am. So hopefully, when that comes out in June and or late June, early July, I'll be able to give you guys a review come back to revisit this and tell you what I think of it. Let's see. My computer's being fussy today. Here's a cool one. Paul is dead. It's on page 56 from Image Comics. And I'll show you a little bit of the artwork as well in a moment from the book. The writer is Paolo Baron. The artist is Ernesto Carbonetti. The genre is alternate historical fiction. The release date is April 22nd, 2020. What it's about: John Lennon can't speak. He can't take his eyes off of the photo of a car in flames with Paul McCartney's body inside. His friend is no longer here, and that means the Beatles are no longer here either. But John wants to know the truth, and with George and Ringo, he will begin to re-examine the final hours of Paul's life. It's $16.99, and here's some of the original artwork for it. Whoops. Gotta do it this way. If I can get close enough to it. Sorry, the camera's blurring it too much. As you all know, in real life, it was Lennon who was shot and killed, and that was what ended the Beatles. This is actually taken from the point of when they were doing the Sgt. Pepper album, I guess, at that time. And kind of like a false legend of, I guess, me not being a huge Beatles aficionado. I seem to recall there was some sort of rumor and I'm sorry, I saw John wanted to say something I missed. The event, meaning the Kent State shooting, also inspired the song Ohio by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and yes, it did. And so going back to that just briefly, I apologize for not seeing your comment there, John. But maybe you're the music guy, John. Was there a history thing back with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts that Paul had been was dead, or one of the Beatles was dead? I remember something like that on the album cover. Because I think that's where this alternate idea came from for this graphic novel. Because the legend of Paul McCartney's death is what this is, as opposed to what actually had happened in real life with John Lennon's, the assassination of John Lennon. He says he's not sure. Okay. All right. No biggie. Not the end of the world. But yeah, that was kind of the thing with that. So I was interested in that. I thought people who would be interested in music, like John, like my friend Tracy Hollingsworth, Vaughn Hall, some of the other guys I know that are, in music, play music, um, would dig that kind of a book. And again, being historical fiction, ultimate historical fiction, something that might appeal to libraries as well. So that's another reason why I picked it. Yeah. He's more of a passing fan of the Beatles like me. Yeah, right. You know, not, shame on both of us, right? We should know better. Both of us being, me being a former musician and you still playing, we should probably be more up on it than we are. But oh well, I'll give myself a Gibbs slap. If you don't know what a Gibbs slap is, then well. Alrighty. Our next book is The Postman from Space. Publisher is Holiday House from page 307. The creator is Guillaume Perrault. John says he's a heathen. Anyway, Postman from Space, Guillaume Perrault. The translation is from Francois Boy. It is a softcover and hardcover edition. The softcover will be $12.99. The hardcover will be $22.99. The genre is science fiction comedy. And it's about a mail carrier named Bob who gets assigned a new postal route in outer space that goes to new planets. One that's even shaped like a bone, populated by cosmic dogs who can't wait to take a bite out of him. And the story features extraterrestrials ranging from a giant blue farmer to a small cactus-like creature, and cinematic views of inspiring alien landscapes. I'm told by people who have seen this in previews or saw the original, because I guess Random House Penguin already did a release of this at one time, that this is something that fans of Bone will enjoy. So I'm going to give it a shot. I ordered it. I like to have some comics now and again, just to relax the tension of all the over the top violence and and darkness that we get in most of our comics these days. So you kind of need something to kind of break it up and something to laugh at. So that's why I got that one. I think, again, that's also something that I think a lot of kids can enjoy. So especially if it's something that's akin to Bone, which is a very successful comic for children. So all ages really for Bone. So okay, our next one is next one is Primer. It's $9.99. It is from DC Comics. The writers are Jennifer Morrow and Thomas Krajewski. The artist is Greta Lusky. The genre is superhero, and the release date will be June 23rd, 2020. And what it is about is Ashley Rayburn is an upbeat girl with a decidedly downbeat history. Her father sits in prison, and she has been bounced from foster home to foster home, not because she's a bad kid, but because of how circumstances seem to find her. Now, to be clear, she was used by her biological father in an escape attempt from the police and stuff, and it put her in bad circumstances with the courts and other stuff, and gave her not so much a record, but from what I understand, but it just, kind of made her a problem child as far as adoptive services were concerned, which is not fair, but that is what her circumstances are, from what I understand from the preview. Her latest would-be foster parents are Keach and Yuka Nolan, In an odd twist of fate, Ashley mistakes a batch of specially designed paints and from her mother. Her mother works for a special science lab that made these paints that give the wearer superpowers as a gift, spray paint set for her. And now the government are after her and her new family because they think that the spray paints are meant to be used as weapons and that this kid stole them and is using them for herself. So, real fun. But yeah, this should be an interesting book. I think the artwork looks pretty fun, colorful. Should be colorful. I mean, spray painting yourself all over the place to give yourself superpowers. I think that's a pretty interesting idea. And here she sees the plane, going to crash, and she spray paints herself all over with strength and invulnerability and flight powers, and goes out and gets on the roof, puts on the wig, and goes out to get the plane. Let's see. I don't know if I actually did any more. No, I didn't. Okay. There's a little bit more preview to this. If you go online and look up DC Primer or DC Comics Primer, you will see more of that preview where she catches the plane and lands it and stuff. It's a pretty cool opening segue to the story or preview to the story. But I only want to do 2 pages. So but yeah, that looks like a really fun thing. And since a lot of people think I don't do enough DC or Marvel previews, I thought I'd add that in there. And that is something I'm going to actually pre-order and put that in my pre-order. So I'll review that when that comes out. Our next book is called Starship Down from Dark Horse Comics. This is Starship Down #1. Now, technically, this was last month's catalog. Starship Down #2 was in this month's catalog, but I'm going to do Starship Down #1 first, since I didn't know if I mentioned it earlier. Dark Horse puts it out. Its writer is Justin Giampaoli. I guess. Some of these names I can't pronounce. It's my fault. I need to learn how to do a better job for some of these Italian and Russian and other names. The artist is Andrea Muti. Genre is science fiction. The release date will be March 18th, 2020, so a little bit over a month from now. And what it's about is a cultural anthropologist consults with the U.S. Naval Intelligence Service to investigate the discovery of an extraterrestrial ship buried underneath the ice for thousands of years in Siberia. The meddling Russians, Vatican officials, the international media spotlight, and her own insecurities all threaten her efforts to keep the fabric of society from crumbling. Now, it's kind of like if you saw the movie that came out recently called Arrival with Amy Adams in it, Jeremy Renner. I think it's something along those lines, probably. So if you like that movie, this comic book might be for you. If you didn't like it, probably not for you. I like that movie to a degree. Plus, I'm kind of a stickler for science fiction, as you guys know. So I'm giving it a shot. And I put that on my pull list. Dark Horse has really strong science fiction books lately, so that's what I'm going for on them. I don't know if I did a preview of the artwork on that one or not. No, I did not. Okay. Our next book is called When Stars Are Scattered. And it is from Dial Books on page 290 of the catalog. And again, this is another one of those books that has two versions. That's both in paperback at $12.99 and hardcover at $20.99. The writers are Victoria Jamieson and Omar Mohammed, and the artist is Victoria Jamieson. Its genre is biographical life drama. And what it's about is Omar and his little brother Hassan arrived in Dadaab, a refugee camp in Kenya 7 years ago. Their father was killed the day they left home, and they haven't seen their mother since they joined their fleeing neighbors. Now Omar is 11 and Hassan is 9, and Omar has quit school to look after his little brother who has an intellectual disability. When Omar is given the opportunity to return to school, he feels torn. He loves school and could have the opportunity to earn a coveted scholarship to a North American university, but is it worth the risk and heartache of leaving his vulnerable brother alone for hours each day? Now, obviously, this is something that actually is based on the life of Omar. His brother, Hassan, does have an intellectual disability. It's about what he went through and the choices he made. And I think that's another thing that I want to share with kids and teenagers, and let them see not only the cultural benefits we have in our country here in America, because of what we had to offer our citizens, but also, I guess, the structures that we have in place that, while it may seem like, well, you're required to do certain things as a kid, they're actually beneficial for you. To show what there are in other countries, and the differences and the dilemmas of the choices we have to make and the sacrifices we choose to both ourselves and others, and the bravery that has to be displayed in sacrifice, whether we're doing it for ourselves or for others, and for both the right and the wrong reasons. That's what this book, to me, has a potential to represent. So I'm looking forward to getting that book, and I'm recommending it to my library as well. So hopefully, this comes out, I believe, in, what did I say? Did it say when it comes out? No. Okay, they didn't have a release date on it. It'll probably come out in late April or early May, but based on when this book, when the catalog comes out. But I'm looking forward to seeing it and giving a review to that as soon as I can get a copy on my hands. Next book is another one of our history-related books. It is autobiographical. This is the expanded edition of They Called Us Enemy. It's $29.99. Publisher is IDW Comics. This book has already been out before. This is an extra 16 or 24 pages of story to it. The writers are George Takei, Justin Eisner, and Stephen Scott. The artist is Harmony Becker. It comes out in July of 2020. The ISBN number is 978-1-60309-470-2. Again, George Takei, best known as the actor who plays Hikaru Sulu on Star Trek, tells the very personal story of his own experience as a child living in an internment camp on U.S. soil for Japanese Americans in the wake of World War II from 1942 to 1945, and the ordeals he and his family endured. Again, we're in a country right now that is torn over racial issues and other problems, in no small part because of who's been elected president. Not that we wouldn't still have those problems if someone else was president. I'm sorry, if Hillary had been voted, we'd still have these problems, and they'd still be out. They'd still be prominent. They'd be presented in a different light, I guess you could say. But they'd be there. Trust me. But again, this is again showing a history that people want to forget about. That we did this. We as Americans did this to a part of our own people, simply because. Okay, well, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, so now we gotta, put every single Japanese American because they're going to be criminals for this, in internment camps, which is nonsense. But that's what they did, and we need to remember that. And because we're looking at, what happens. Okay, what happens if we have another terrorist attack from another country? We got to put every person that's of that ethnicity in internment camps again today. Can you imagine the fight we have on our hands? We didn't have that huge of a Japanese population on the West Coast back in 1941, 42. This is a big difference today. If we had something like that happen, if we had, God forbid, we have another 9/11 or another Pearl Harbor type event on one of our either one of our shores or or anywhere else in the country for that matter, that was predicated to one specific ethnicity, and you go after that one ethnicity nationwide. Can you imagine? This is why we have to read this book. Mm-hmm. If you haven't read it, you need to get it, read it, see it, and try to figure out and share that experience that George is trying to share with you, so that you have a better understanding of why this was wrong and why it would still be wrong to this day, no matter what we go through. As painful as whatever destruction may be brought upon us, we cannot extend destruction upon others in retaliation. We have to find ways to, it's not about forgiveness, but we have to be able to get past that. And we haven't been able to do that ever. But by going through these things, maybe we'll learn. So that's another reason why I'm bringing up these kind of books. And I think it's great that IDW does this type of stuff. And other companies do these kind of things when we're talking about protesting, or we're talking about wrong things that are done wrong to a part of our society. I love these kind of books. And speaking of another one from IDW Publishing, page 144, 1999, Tiananmen, 1989, Our Shattered Hopes. This is about the infamous June 4th, 1989 incident, also known as the Tiananmen Square Massacre. It is written by Lun Zhang, or Zhang, and Adrian Gombod. The artist is Ami Zian. The genre is autobiographical historical. The ISBN number is 978-1-68405-699-6, is due to come out in June of 2020. And this story is told from a first-hand account from the sociology teacher, Lun Zhang, who witnessed it all. He was there. And he reveals a side of Chinese youth from the students that were there that were killed by this during this, thing, because they were protesting what was going on at that time. And he examines and counters a lot of the viewpoints that were presented in Western journalism at the time, and the Chinese diplomats in their presentation of the event. So again, it's John Norris, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Well, yes, exactly, but we tend to do it all the damn time, unfortunately, and that's unfortunately that's a theme for today's show, and I guess because I'm showing this over and over, these kind of themes, we keep doing this all over the world, over and over and over. Whether it's Kent State, whether it's Tiananmen Square, whether it's I don't know. Um, did he do a stage show based on that same event? He may have, you know. And you want the honest to God truth? I wish George Takei was a little bit younger, because there's a guy I'd vote for president. Now, why would I do that? He's gay. He's Asian. Yeah. So what? He's got character. He's got class, and he gives a damn about the American people. That's what we need. But yeah, I think he's a little bit too old for the thing at this point. But yep, he just looked it up, and it's called Allegiance, and it had a Broadway run, and absolutely, yeah. I would, kudos to Kay, of course. Great guy, national treasure as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, there's a guy who deserves a Presidential Medal of Freedom. Yeah, nothing against Rush Limbaugh, really, seriously, but no, you want to give a guy who's actually done something, you give it to George Takei. If he hasn't got one, that's who deserves one. Limbaugh, I mean, it's almost like oh, you're sick, here, have a medal. But that's just my opinion on that. But anyway, our next book is X-Ray Robot, 1 and 2. 1 was last month, 2 is this month. They're both from Dark Horse, $3.99 each. The creator is Mike Allred, writer and illustrator. Colorist is Wes Laura. Genre is SF science fiction superhero. The release dates will be March 25th and April 29th, 2020, respectively. And what it's about is Max is a family man seeking a more interesting life. So while conducting a new experiment at work, the fabric of reality is torn before his eyes, and a robotic figure appears, claiming to be his 277-year-old self. The robot is able to, quote-unquote, X-ray multiple dimensions and battles an entity who wants to take all of life to its pre-Big Bang status. In other words, he just wants to take it. So that's kind of an interesting concept to me. And of course, when you saw that artwork, it's pretty open and classic. Clean art. I just, I'm always have been a fan of Mike Allred's artwork. I tend to follow Michael more when he's doing his own stuff rather than when he's working for the mainstream. But he seems to be a pretty imaginative guy, so I tend to go ahead and get these kind of stuff when he's doing this. And that pretty much goes for what I want to cover in previews right now. Like I said, I had a lot to go. I just kind of did touch base on a few things here and there. There was probably a good 85 to 100 items. I just picked things I thought people would really recognize and favor. But what I would really like to point out, though, if you go to a comic shop regularly, get a previews catalog. If you have pull orders, you always tell your people, have your retailer order you a previews, go through it yourself. You're gonna find cool stuff, and there's always going to be times where Marvel or DC or somebody else is doing a comic book that's not going to please you for whatever reasons. And by looking through this, you're going to come to the conclusion that you don't need to follow Batman Forever or X-Men Forever or whatever. You can go ahead and let that go when it's not cool anymore or whatever. Iceman's gay. I don't want to read it anymore. Captain America's Nazi. I don't want to read it anymore. Whatever the problem it is, you can let that go, find something else because it's in here to find. The retailer can't find it for you. You have to go find it for yourself.
Okay, but you can't get it if they don't order these for you. So make sure that you let them know you want one. Okay. So that's the end of our previews reviews, and we're going to take a quick break and give to our sponsor for the week. As soon as I can get this silly thing to do what it's supposed to, there we go. And there we go. Now it wants. And our sponsor this week is same as last week, is Scratch and Spin Records, Comics, and Movies. This Saturday, they're having exclusive screening of Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn at AMC Dutch Square Theater here in Columbia, West Columbia, at Saturday, February 8th, 8 p.m. You can get tickets only at the store, which is located on 12th Street in Triangle City, Columbia, across from Zesto's, across the street from Zesto's on 12th Street. You can reach the store at 803-794-8888 for more details, or you can go on Facebook or Twitter, look up Scratch and Spin, and ask for more details. They will have a Harley Quinn costume contest where you can win a $100 gift card. They will have cosplayers, Zoe Francis Charles as Harley Quinn and Lynn Powell as Batman in person. They will have local artists, including Clay Patterson, and comic dealers, and other prizes there. A free art print. I don't know who the artist is for the art print. They didn't tell me. So there is that as well. And welcome back our third person again who's been watching, or welcome another person who's the third person. But whoever's been coming in, I appreciate it. And we are going to start our next segment, which is general comics reviews. The stuff I got this thing. Oh no, we can't do that yet. I apologize. We have to do something else first. Another quick news event. As I mentioned at the earlier beginning of the show, we had a recent death. We have some more sad news, unfortunately. It's not as sad, thank goodness. Hold on a moment. Okay. There we go. All right. Let me see if I can share this with you guys real quick. I need to remove that. And there we go. And that is another one of our fellow artists, Dexter Vines. He's an inker. You probably know him best for inking Amazing X-Men when Nightcrawler was brought back from the dead. But he's been working for Marvel for quite some time. He was just diagnosed in the last week or so of having a form of blood cancer and some spinal problems last January 27th. And he found out two things. He had fractured vertebrae in his lower back, and that they were a result of multiple myeloma, which is a cancer that attacks the plasma of the blood. It's a cancer that forms in a type of white blood cell called a plasma cell, and it helps you fight infections by making antibodies that recognize and attack germs. Multiple myeloma causes the cancer cells to accumulate in the bone marrow, where they crowd out healthy blood cells. Rather than produce helpful antibodies, they produce abnormal proteins that will cause complications. Now, luckily this was found very early in its stage of development, and treatment has begun, but it's treatable and maybe even curable, but it's rare, but it is potentially curable because they found it early. of course, it is expensive. And while he does have some insurance, it's minimal, and it's certainly not going to cover everything. And he can't work when he's got spinal surgery, obviously, so he can't keep up with his living expenses. So there's been a GoFundMe uh, donation drives to help to set up, help him out to afford chemo treatments, treatment for his back, and help with cost of living while he fights this cancer. And that was developed by Joe Peacock, and that was created 5 days ago. And that was at GoFundMe. Now, let me put this in real quick here, what the actual there. That's the actual address you can go to. Mm-hmm. As you can see, they did have a 25,000 goal. They have exceeded it. There have been 554 donors. But this is not something that's going to be cheap at all. We're talking about him losing probably a good year to a year and a half of work, probably. I would not be surprised. If he needs back surgery and he can't sit and draw for months on end, that's like what, that's a good $8,000 to $10,000 loss right there. And then that's just for the artwork assignments. Then you figure the sales of not having the original art to sell. So what you basically just covered is his money there so far that he would have made if he was working. And you figure medical expenses will be much more expensive than that. So he needs more, folks. So I'm not trying to push you for it or anything, but if you can spare a few bucks his way, that would be great. He's a good guy. He's worked his butt off for a long time, and I know he's helped entertain a lot of you out there. So go ahead and give him a shout and give him some help at GoFundMe.com/F/Dexter-Vines-Beat-Blood-Cancer. And I will put that also in my description of the program later on. After it airs, I'll edit it and put it in there. Now we can go to do the comic reviews again. Our first book is Backtrack #1 from Oni Press, $3.99. It just came out yesterday. It's from Brian Jones, Jake Elpick, and Doug Garbuck. And what it's about is Ellison Levy is a washed-up criminal wheelman on the skids and drinking her life away after a tragic loss in her past, just waiting to die in a bottle. Enter Gasper Gulix, a mystery man who offers her a chance of a lifetime. Enter and win a race, and he will give her the power to go back and change the past. When she agrees, she doesn't expect to get hurled back to the Jurassic era and get chased by T-Rexes and pterodactyls. And that's just the first leg of the race. Recommended for 16 and up. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And here is the book. I'm going to go ahead and I didn't have time to get everything scanned like I normally do to show that way. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you the books themselves. There's the beginning of the race. A light goes on. They pass through, and then they're in the middle of the Jurassic era. And the funny part is they're in California, and there's supposed to be a 30-mile race from Dodger Stadium to San Diego or something like that. It was some crazy thing like that. But here's a T-Rex that just decided to have fun. Let me find the actual phrasing of the thing real quick here. Okay. Your objective is simple. From this starting point, simply drive to the parking area of Dodger Stadium. So they're in Los Angeles. Whoever arrives first will find their life forever changed. Wait, that's only 30 miles. This thing you promised is determined by who wins that? Oh, I understand you're confusing, but don't worry, you'll be taking the long way around. Now, ready, set, and then you saw the gun go off in the driving segment. I showed you that. So the long way around is they went back in time. But we continue the chasing segment there. And she gets to the safety zone there at the building there. It's not, that seems like it doesn't fit. And she's the last one to make it. And then they say, well, yep, this is what's, that's the end of the first leg. You survived. And that's where they leave you off at. I'm kind of curious because basically it's for fans of, if you like Death Race 2000 or Fast and Furious, you might like this. Or if you like stuff like where they do the sliders or stuff like that, this is probably up your alley. But, some people are saying it's a little bit too derivative. I can see their point. Me, I don't know. I'm kind of getting a kick out of it for what it is. So I gave it 4 out of 5. And if it gets, stays at this level or gets better, it'll keep the 4 out of 5. If it gets worse, it'll lose. We'll see as the story progresses. Our next book is Captain Ginger Season 2, Number 1 from Ahoy Comics, $3.99. Stuart Moore is writer. Artist is Gene Brigman. Genre is science fiction. Released yesterday, February 5th. I have covered this series before in season 1, where the cats are humanoid somewhat and otherwise regular cats as well. And they have taken over a starship because the humans are gone. Well, they have found themselves stranded in space when their ship goes dark and their computer's code is hacked because they had a first contact situation at the end of the first season of issues. Can this situation that they have been faced with lead them to an act of sabotage and their ultimate destruction? Well, I can tell you I didn't really care for the cover colors on this. The front of it, just, I don't know, the way the cat looks, just, it kind of, I don't know. The back of the stuff looks really nice, but the, I don't know what it is. The cat in front just doesn't feel finished to me or something. I don't know. But, so the cover's not my favorite, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Could have been a lot different. Could have been a lot worse. Interior art is gorgeous as usual. June's doing a great job. The characters are still cool. Still fun stuff going on. Exactly what's going on with the characters and everything. Apparently, I don't really want to give it away. I almost had to tell you what's going on would give everything away, really, and I don't want to do that. Basically, if you've read the previous issue or the trade, they got some information from another ship, and it has now infected everything, and that's what's turned their ship dark. And they're trying to fix it, but they can't. And now the aliens that they were fighting, which is a different alien, not the ones that they're having the first contact with, who apparently are dogs. That's why you see the pug thing. Are going to get them all. But whether or not the dogs did this or the dogs were a trap or not, that hasn't really been explained yet. So we'll wait and see. I gave it 4 stars, mostly because I've read the first season. If I were to read this on its own, I would be lost. I hate to say, as to what was going on, and I'd have to give it like half of that of a rating, a 2, unfortunately. As far as the story goes, because you really do need to have read the first season to understand what's going on. But the art's just gorgeous. So we'll leave it at that. Our next book for comics reviews is Detective Comics. As you guys know, I don't do a lot of DC or Batman. This is the first time I've actually bought a detective comic or Batman regular monthly series since 1993. I'll wait for you to pick up your jaws up off the floor. This is issue 1006 and 1007. Writer is Peter Tomasi. The artist is Kyle Holtz, which is the reason I bought these issues. The colorist is David Barron. The genre is superhero. Released August and September of 2019. I just never got around to reading them. And what it's about is the Spectre's host body, Jim Corrigan, is kidnapped by the cult known as the Divine Hand, and the Spectre must seek out Batman to save him. It's for ages 14 and up, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Now, I've always been a fan of Kyle's. I've known Kyle since the early 90s, when he first broke into the industry. In fact, one of his earliest assignments was on Nightman, if that wasn't his earliest assignment, for Malibu, and he gave me some of his pages to ink for some of my earlier inking portfolios. That's how we met. And I always wanted to see what his stuff would be like on Batman. So to see it after all these years was the main reason I got these issues. And I was just kind of hoping that Peter Tomasi just didn't crap the bed, because I'm not a fan of Tomasi's writing. I'm not a fan of really any of the Batman writers these days. And I read this 2-issue storyline. And, okay, there's a lot missing in the story, in my opinion. I still don't know who this cult is or what their thing is, other than they want to somehow separate the Spectre from Jim Corrigan as the host body for some reason and gain control of the Spectre. But overall, for what it is, I can't say that I was disappointed. I gave it a 3 out of 5. That means it's average to a little bit above average for a comic. So, I can't. I'm happy for what I got. That having been said, recently it was brought up on Sweetcast that artists are asking, what would it take to get you to read Marvel and DC, type thing. Well, what it would take me to read Batman on a regular book, regular monthly, Kyle Holtz drawing the book with a different writer that I actually want to read. I'm going to be honest. That's what it would take. But I'm going to go ahead and show you some of Kyle's art. If I can find here's a good double page spread. Has a little bit of the Bernie Wrightson, Kelly Jones feel to it. Now, I don't know if Kyle can actually do a regular monthly book on time by himself, because he did all the artwork. He didn't have an inker on this. But if he can't do pencils and inks and hit a monthly deadline, I'm sure they can find him an inker that's solid and could ink him well enough. In fact, I'd recommend Jason Moore as one possibility. Yeah, I'd pair him up with someone that he's worked with before, like Stephen Englehart, who he worked with on Nightman, who has a history with writing Batman. Or I'd pair him up with, Greg Hatcher, Bobby Nash, Brandon Easton, Jeff Thorne, John Hartness. Just, I got quite a few people I can name, really. Just don't give me the people that they have today. I don't like those writers. So I did enjoy those though, and I can say that's the first time I've seen detective since like the Nightfall storylines, where I actually was willing to pay for it and enjoy it. Good job, Kyle. Our next book is Read Only Memories number 2. Unfortunately, I guess you could say, I did the review for number 1 2 weeks ago or last week, and number 1 I told you was $4.99. I thought that was just going to be for the first issue. It is actually the price for the second issue. That's what they're going to be charging, is $5 an issue. The publisher's IDW Comics. The writers are Sina Grace and Grace Kenny. Artist is Stefano Simeone and Christina, Titsu. And genre is SF crime-romance. Came out yesterday. And what it is about is our detective Lexi has uncovered the trail of where her missing subject is. Correction from the last review. I screwed up on the review for the first issue. I misinterpreted what was going on somehow. I thought that there was the robot that had hired her was in love with another robot. He's actually in love with a male human that's supposed to be in love with the robot. So that changes a lot of what's going on with the story. And so I wanted to clarify that before we go any further. Now, it turns out that this human that she's tracking is in a possible cult where humans are going to try to download their minds into a digital artificial intelligence format. Lexi doesn't even know if that's possible, but even if it is, it sure isn't legal. And she's not sure if he's doing it willingly, so she's on the move to stop him. Oh, great. Here comes a bounty hunter, one who especially doesn't like her. Just perfect. Good golly almighty. Here we go. We got a story. Gave it 3 out of 5. I gave the first issue 3 out of 5. Like I said, things were a little bit confusing, I guess, from the first to the second. The main reason I told you guys I was going to review the second issue last time was because I wanted you guys, I told you I didn't really care for the second half of the storyline that was done by the second art team. And I'd show you that artwork because I showed you the first kind. And you can see the comparison. This is the kind of art I didn't care for, the 8-bit kind of digital stuff versus the actual main art for the book. And that's when she just gets discovered right at the end by the bounty hunter who doesn't like her. But that's neither here nor there. It's not that the artwork is bad by any means. And it's only a 2-page segment in this particular one. But it's not my thing, basically. You know, I just don't care for that particular style, personally. And it kind of detracts a little bit from me. But, you know, but the story itself is pretty cool still. So, you know, for the main story. But unfortunately, another reason why I kept it at 3 instead of 4, because it is very interesting, is the price point at $5 a book. Well, we talked about this in the questions and answers. You know, why is IW losing money? Well, because they're charging them too much for the books. I mean, $5, you know, for a book that, I mean, yes, it's a licensed comic. Read Only Memories is a licensed property. It's based on a video game. And part of that money's profits have to go back to the video game that they want the licensing for company. So that's why it's that high, you know. And, you know, the only way you can counter this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, is if you support their creator-owned division and heavily support that so that they don't need to rely so heavily on their licensing. And that's true of IDW, Dark Horse, Dynamite, you know, even Oni and Lion Forge, I suppose, Boom. You know, quite a few companies are in this same boat. So, you know, it's just that since IDW is a publicly traded company, that information is publicly known, whereas some of the other companies are more privately known, and the losses and financial numbers aren't out there. Okay. Mark Andrew Smith popped in, and speaking of IDW, and yes, IDW is doing a lot of nonfiction and historical books, and that's a good thing. He mentions that he watched the Birds of Prey movie yesterday. Mark, you're still overseas, is that correct? Mm-hmm. He says it was fun, low stakes plot. Ewan McGregor was the best part of it. Not really surprising there. I mean, Ewan's an excellent actor, but personally, I'm not interested in seeing it. I'll probably watch it on DVD or something sometime. But as far as going in the theater, I'm not into it. But I'm not. How do I put this? A lot of the comic movies, unless John wants to go see it, or unless my other friend Tracy Hollingsworth wants to go see it, I'm not interested as a role. You know, he can tell you I tend to go for other things. What was it? It was my birthday a couple of years back when Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was coming out, and instead I said, no, you've already seen the movie, because he went to see it with some other friends. Oh, he goes, I'll take you to that one. Again, I like the movie. No. We're going to go see Colossal with Anne Hathaway. I want to see that instead, you know. It's a better movie. So, you know, that's how I am about that sort of thing. I tend to go for other things rather than the comics. But not that there's anything wrong with comic movies, mind you. It's just, I guess I want different content from different media for entertainment, just a broader depth of range of content and genre, I guess, for me. That could be what it is. But let's see what else we've got here. Yes. We have John Carpenter's Tales of Science Fiction Redhead. Number 3 of 5, $3.99. The publisher is Storm King. The writer is Dwayne Skorzinski. The artist is Jason Felix. Letterer is Janice Chang. Genre is science fiction horror. Released yesterday, February 5th, 2020. In this third installment, our lead character has somehow been contacted by a secretive operative who may or may not be a member of the CDC, Center for Disease Control, who is trying to guide her to safety before the government capture, but it's too late. She gets caught, and now she's being subjected to experimentation. Recommended for ages 16 and up. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. It's going nowhere. The story is just, it's going nowhere. I'm sorry. Marnie, the redhead lead character, is just either blow her up or it's like, just get to the point. 3 issues of a story that could have been told in 1 so far. I'm not at all pleased with this one. I'm sorry. And yeah, the artwork, Jason Felix isn't a bad artist by any means. But it just feels too digital, computer drawn, kind of like 3D model drawn artwork rather than traditional for me. And I'm just not happy with it, unfortunately. But I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to get the whole series because I'm the type of person that when I order something, I tend to finish them out, even if just to get the whole story, if nothing else. It's progressively just gone downhill, unfortunately, and hopefully it won't drop any further than 2 out of 5. Oh well. Unfortunately, that one was a disappointment. And John says, yes, Colossal was the better movie. And, I don't know if certainly both of us enjoyed it better. They're distinctly different movies. Colossal is a very dark and disturbing movie about emotional and physical abusive relationships. And yet it has this sense of quirky humor about it and how it correlates to the whole Godzilla kaiju type monsters and everything was just very quirky and very unique. And it stood out as something that we hadn't seen before. And I think that was I think that's what made it special. Whereas Guardians, ego is not, nothing against Kurt Russell, but he's not Ego. Ego's a freaking planet, not a little man. And there's other little things that they just, they made too many changes to suit the MCU that just, those aren't I guess you could say those aren't my Guardians. That's Star-Lord and the Infinity Watch. That's the way I call it. That's what I call them. I don't consider those the Guardians of the Galaxy, but most people do because they don't know the real history of Marvel, especially the people who are just MCU fans. So, that's fine. But 6 of one, half a dozen of another. No big deal. What else do we have today? That is the last of our reviews for the week. So I'm going to go back to our fundraiser with one more reminder, if you folks don't mind, to help Dex beat blood cancer again. He did get his first chemo treatments. He just got home from his first treatments, I believe. It's going to be a long battle, though. And again, that is the link to go to it. And I'll put that link up in hold on a second. Let me see if I can. Oh, can't. It won't let me. Oh, maybe it will. No, it won't let me. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can do it a different way. Nope, it won't. All right. I can do it a different way. There. I went ahead and put a link in the chat as well. So that should take care of that. Yeah. It's been a long night. I'm sorry, guys. Been kind of crappy weather over here in Columbia, South Carolina. As John can tell you, it's been raining all day over here, and my whole front yard's flooded right now. Luckily, it hasn't quite flooded to the door, but at least it hadn't since the last we looked. But then we have buckets sitting out in our front that's like filling up and still spilling over. So if we didn't have the buckets there, I think our whole front area would be nothing but water right now. So it's not cool, not fun. And so, whoops, sorry. Since that is pretty much the show for the evening, unless, hold on a second. Oh yeah, it's raining here. Yep. Yeah. Unless John or Mark or someone has something that they care to add tonight, I can give you guys open mic for a few moments if you'd like. If you need to reach me during the rest of the week, you can reach me on Facebook at lewis.brightraven, DeviantArt at deviantart.com/brightraven, here on YouTube at Quoth the Raven, Lewis Brightraven, at Gmail at Quoth the Raven, LBR72, gmail.com, or if you must, Lewis Brightraven at yahoo.com. The podcast is normally airing live Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And someone wants to say hello. Yes, he does. Just give me a second. Here he is. He's just being fussy. What? Oh, now you don't want to look at the camera. You want to hit me, but you don't want to look at the camera. He's jealous. He's always jealous when I'm on TV. He thinks he should be on TV, but he don't want to get in front of the camera. What's the matter, boy? For those of you who don't know, this is midnight. He's my baby. He probably just wants attention. He's a little bit cold. Wet weather, he don't like it. Okay, little. There you go. Get down. All right. So I appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you guys next week. Next week, we don't have our stuff scheduled for what's going on next week yet. I have contacted someone I'm hoping to have as a guest next week. I haven't heard back yet. His annual John's going on his annual trip to Disney World next week, so he won't be on. Say hello to Patrick Mahomes for us. Obviously, since the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl and he's going to Disney World, I'm sure, right along with you. John goes every year, so I'm just teasing him. We'll miss you, John. And I do mean that quite sincerely. But hopefully we will have a guest. I'm not going to say who until it's confirmed, but if I, we'll see. So until then, have a good weekend. Stay safe, and read comics and enjoy life. Oh, my boy. My silly computer's being funny again. Why is it doing this? Oh, well. Hold on a second. It doesn't want to play my music to close out. Well, I don't know why, but it's doing that. And it's very annoying.